The first thing Tate said to me after 12 years apart was, "You still owe me $20. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because there are some moments when your brain just stops working and all you can do is laugh at how ridiculous life suddenly feels. I was standing outside the coffee shop on Main Street, holding a paper cup in one hand and my phone in the other, when I heard his voice behind me. "Jet?" I turned around, and there he was, Tate. For a second, I honestly didn't recognize him, not because he looked completely different. That would have been easier somehow. It was because he looked exactly like the version of him I'd spent years remembering, only older, taller than I remembered, broader through the shoulders, dark hair that was a little longer than when we were teenagers, a faint line of stubble along his jaw, and those eyes. Same stupid eyes, same look like he knew something I didn't. He smiled. "Wow," he said. "You really did get old." I stared at him. Then I laughed again. "You disappear for 12 years, and that's what you come up with?" He shrugged. I was nervous. That caught me off guard. Tate had never been nervous around me, at least not when we were kids. We'd met when we were 8. Our parents lived 2 streets apart, and somehow we became inseparable almost immediately. We rode bikes until dinner, built terrible forts in my backyard, spent entire summers trying to convince ourselves we were going to become professional skateboarders, despite neither of us being particularly good at skateboarding. Then high school happened. Things got complicated, and then Tate left. Just like that. His family moved across the country after his dad got a new job, and everyone kept saying we'd stay in touch. We didn't. At first, we tried. Texts became calls. Calls became occasional messages. Eventually, nothing. I told myself I didn't care. That was a lie. For years, whenever someone asked me who my best friend had been growing up, Tate was the first name that came to mind. Even after I'd stopped talking about him. Even after I'd convinced myself I'd forgotten. Now he was standing 6 feet away from me, smiling like he'd just seen me yesterday. "So," he said, glancing at the coffee in my hand, "you still take it black?" I looked down at my cup. "Yeah." I knew it. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." Something about the way he said it made my smile disappear. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because I remembered everything too, including the last night I'd ever seen him. We'd been 17, sitting on the hood of his car behind the old baseball field. He'd told me he was leaving the next morning. I remember staring at him and pretending I wasn't upset. I remember him saying, "We'll figure it out." I remember asking, "Figure what out?" And him just looking at me. For a second, I'd thought he was going to say something important. Instead, he'd punched my shoulder and said, "Don't become boring while I'm gone." Then he left. I never got the chance to ask what he meant. "Jet?" I blinked. Tate was watching me. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You disappeared for a second." "Just thinking." "About me?" He said it casually. Too casually. I gave him a look. "Don't flatter yourself." He grinned. "There he is." I shook my head. "You really haven't changed. Neither have you." "That isn't necessarily a compliment." "It is from me." There was that smile again. The one I'd forgotten I hated. Or maybe the one I'd forgotten I liked. I wasn't ready to figure out which. We stood there for another minute, talking about completely normal things. His mom was still living nearby. His dad had retired. Tate had spent the last few years working in another state and had finally decided to move back. "For good?" I asked. "That's the plan." I nodded. For some reason, my stomach tightened. "For good?" I repeated. "Yeah." He looked at me. Then he smiled. "Guess you're stuck with me again." I should have made a joke. Instead, I just stared at him. Because suddenly, I was remembering being 16, lying on the grass beside him, listening to him talk about everything we were going to do when we were older. At the time, I'd assumed we'd grow up together. I'd assumed he'd always be there. Then life happened. People changed. And now, somehow, Tate was back, and he was acting like 12 years hadn't happened at all. "Hey," he said. "What? You still have that old treehouse?" I laughed. "You're kidding." "No. It's falling apart." So? "So, we're not 12 anymore." Tate tilted his head. "Who said anything about being 12? I didn't have an answer for that. He smiled and stepped backward toward the sidewalk. "Come on." "Where?" "My place." I stared at him. "Your place?" "Yeah, I need help unpacking." "You've been back less than a week." "Exactly." "And you already found me?" I asked around. "That sounds slightly creepy." "You're welcome." I laughed despite myself. Then he turned and started walking. After a few steps, he glanced over his shoulder. "You coming, Jet?" I stood there for another second. Then I followed him. And I had no idea that saying yes to a simple invitation was going to bring back feelings I'd spent years convincing myself were gone. Because Tate hadn't come back to town just to reconnect with an old friend. I just didn't know that yet. Tate's apartment was only a few blocks from where we'd grown up. That was the first weird thing. The second was that he'd apparently rented a place in the same neighborhood where we'd spent half our childhood. "You planned this?" I asked as we walked up the stairs. He glanced back at me. "Planned what?" "Moving back here." "No." "You just happened to find an apartment 5 minutes from my house?" He smiled. "It's a good neighborhood." "You're avoiding the question." "Maybe." I stopped halfway up the stairs. "Tate?" He turned around. "What? Seriously?" His smile faded slightly. "I wanted something familiar." That answer hit differently. I didn't know what to say, so I followed him upstairs. His apartment was still mostly empty. A couple of boxes were stacked against the walls. There was a mattress on the floor, and the kitchen looked like he'd bought everything at once and hadn't figured out where anything belonged. "You really need help," I said. "I know." "You've been here almost a week." "I've been busy." "Doing what?" He looked at me. "Trying to find you." I laughed, assuming he was joking. But he wasn't. At least, not completely. He walked over to one of the boxes and opened it. "You want to start with the kitchen?" "Sure." For the next hour, we unpacked. And it was weirdly easy. That's what bothered me. There wasn't any awkwardness. No uncomfortable silence. No need to figure out what we were supposed to talk about after 12 years. Tate just slipped back into my life like he'd never left. He complained about the cheap plates he'd bought. I made fun of his terrible taste in mugs. He threw a dish towel at me. I threw it back. At one point, I caught myself laughing so hard that I had to lean against the counter. Tate looked at me. "What?" "Nothing." "You're staring." "I haven't heard you laugh like that in a long time." I stopped smiling. "You haven't heard me laugh in a long time?" "Exactly." The room suddenly felt quieter. I looked down at the box in front of me. "So, why did you really come back?" He didn't answer immediately. I could hear traffic outside. Then he said, "I got tired of pretending I didn't miss this place." "This place?" "Yeah." He looked around. "The town. My family. You." My heart gave a strange little kick. I tried to hide it. "You could have called." "I know." "You could have texted." "I know." "You could have done literally anything." He nodded. "I know." I finally looked at him. "Then why didn't you?" Tate rubbed the back of his neck. I was scared. I almost laughed. Of me? Of what you'd say? That wasn't the answer I expected. I crossed my arms. What did you think I'd say? That you hated me. I didn't hate you. I know that now. How? Because you're standing in my apartment helping me unpack. I rolled my eyes. That proves nothing. It proves enough. He smiled. I tried not to smile back. Failed. Around 6, we ordered pizza. We sat on the floor because Tate still hadn't assembled his dining table. It felt exactly like being teenagers again. Except we were both adults now. And there was something different underneath all the familiar jokes. Something I couldn't quite name. Tate picked up a slice. You remember the old movie theater? The one that closed? Yeah. You mean the place where you tried to sneak us into an R-rated movie? I didn't try. You absolutely did. I succeeded. You got caught 10 minutes later. Technicality. I laughed. He smiled at me. Then his expression changed. You remember the night before I left? My stomach tightened. Yeah. I think about it sometimes. I put my pizza down. So do I. Neither of us spoke. Tate looked toward the window. I wanted to tell you something that night. I know. He looked at me quickly. You knew? I guessed. What did you think I was going to say? I hesitated, because the honest answer had lived in the back of my mind for years. I thought you were going to tell me you didn't want to leave. He stared at me. That wasn't it. Then what was it? He looked down at his hands. I'll tell you. When? Soon. I frowned. That sounds suspicious. It is. I laughed quietly. Then Tate's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Mom. He answered and walked toward the kitchen. I watched him for a moment before looking away. I told myself I was just curious. That was all. But the truth was, seeing him again had reopened something I'd thought I'd buried a long time ago. And I hated how quickly it had happened. When he came back, he had a strange expression on his face. What? He shook his head. Nothing. Tate. My mom asked if you were here? I raised an eyebrow. How does she know? She saw your car. I laughed. Of course she did. She wants us to come over for dinner tomorrow. Us? Apparently we're 12 again. I smiled. Your mom always liked me. She still does. He sat back down beside me. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved. It was such a small thing, barely anything. But I noticed. And judging by the way Tate suddenly became very interested in his pizza, I wasn't the only one who noticed. After a few seconds, he quietly said, Jet? Yeah? I meant what I said earlier. About what? Not wanting to lose this again. I turned toward him. His expression was serious. I don't want to disappear this time. I swallowed. Then don't. He nodded. I won't. For a moment, neither of us looked away. And then Tate smiled. That familiar, impossible smile. Also, you still owe me $20. I laughed. You're still on that? Absolutely. You've waited 12 years to collect a $20? Interest. How much? He thought about it. Dinner tomorrow. That isn't interest. It is now. I shook my head. You're unbelievable. And you're still coming tomorrow. I sighed. Yeah. His smile widened. Good. I didn't know it then, but that dinner was going to be the moment everything started making sense. Because Tate wasn't just back in town. He'd come back with a reason, and somehow I was becoming part of it. The next morning, I woke up thinking about Tate. Which was annoying. I'd barely slept, and every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the conversation we'd had over pizza. I wanted to tell you something. I'll tell you. I don't want to lose this again. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but it did. I spent most of Saturday trying to convince myself I was being ridiculous. I cleaned my apartment, did laundry, went grocery shopping, even reorganized the kitchen cabinets, which was something I hadn't done since moving in. None of it helped. By 5 o'clock, I was standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear to Tate's mother's house. I stared at myself in the mirror. "This is dinner," I muttered. Not a date. Not anything remotely close to a date. Just dinner with an old friend's family. I finally grabbed a dark shirt and jeans. When I arrived, Tate was already outside. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed, wearing a simple gray shirt and jeans. He looked up when he saw me. "You came. You invited me. I wasn't sure you'd actually show." "Why wouldn't I?" He shrugged. "Because you're complicated." I laughed. "I'm complicated?" "Extremely. You've known me for one day after 12 years and already decided that? I've known you since we were 8. That shut me up." He pushed himself away from the car. "You look good." I glanced down at myself. "Thanks." Tate kept looking at me. "What?" "Nothing." "You're staring. Maybe I missed you." He said it so casually that I didn't know how to respond. So I opened the front door. "Come on." His mom nearly knocked me over with the hug she gave me. "Jet." "Hi, Mrs. Miller?" "Oh, don't call me that. You used to call me Aunt Lisa." I was 12. "And?" Tate laughed behind me. "Mom, let him breathe." She looked between us. "You two look exactly the same." I smiled. "That's not possible." She shook her head. "No, Tate's right. Something about you two hasn't changed." Dinner was surprisingly normal. His parents asked about my job, my apartment, my life. I asked about Tate's work. We talked about the town, old neighbors, people from school. It was almost comfortable enough to make me forget everything that had happened between Tate and me. Almost. After dinner, Tate and I went outside. His parents were still talking in the kitchen. The evening air was cool. We walked down the driveway without saying anything. "You remember the park?" Tate asked. "Which one?" "The one behind the school." I smiled. "The one with the broken basketball hoop?" "Yeah." "You used to swear you could dunk." "I could've." "You were 5'7". "I had hops." "You had absolutely no hops." He laughed. We kept walking. The park was only a few blocks away. By the time we reached it, the sun had almost disappeared. The old basketball court looked smaller than I remembered. Everything did. The benches, the playground, even the trees. Tate sat down on one of the benches. I sat beside him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I owe you an explanation." I looked at him. "For leaving?" "For everything." I didn't say anything. He stared at the empty court. "When we were 17, I knew I was leaving." "I remember." "But I didn't know when until the night before." I nodded. "My parents didn't want me to tell anyone until everything was final. That makes sense." "No, it doesn't." He looked at me. "I should have told you earlier." "Maybe." "I was scared." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." He looked down at his hands. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. My chest tightened. "What were you feeling?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Do you remember how close we were?" I almost laughed. "Of course I remember." "I don't mean normal best friend close." I went completely still. Tate looked at me. "I mean the kind of close where you don't really understand where friendship ends and something else begins." I stared at him. He swallowed. "I knew something was different between us." My heart was pounding. Tate. I didn't know what to call it. Neither of us moved. I was 17, he continued. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't even know if you felt the same way. I looked away. He noticed. You did. It wasn't a question. I took a breath. Yeah. His eyes softened. I knew it. How? You were terrible at hiding it. I laughed nervously. So were you. He smiled. Yeah. The silence returned, but this time it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest. For the first time in 12 years, we were finally talking about the thing we'd both spent years avoiding. I thought about calling you, Tate said. Why didn't you? Because I thought you'd moved on. I did. He looked at me. Did you? I hesitated. Mostly. Mostly? I looked at the ground. You don't exactly forget someone who was your whole world when you were 17. Tate's expression changed. For once, he didn't have a joke. He just looked at me. I never forgot you either. That hit harder than I expected. I turned toward him. Then why did you wait 12 years? His jaw tightened. Because I thought coming back would make everything worse. How? I was afraid you'd hate me. I never hated you. I know that now. Then what changed? He gave me a small smile. You. Me? I heard you were still here. So? So I realized I'd spent 12 years wondering what would have happened if I hadn't left. I didn't know what to say. Tate leaned back against the bench. I don't want to wonder anymore. The words stayed between us. I could hear traffic in the distance, a dog barking somewhere down the street. Everything felt strangely ordinary. And yet, my entire world seemed to have shifted. I looked at him. What do you want, Tate? He met my eyes. I want to know what would have happened if I hadn't been so scared. My heart jumped. Before I could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His expression immediately changed. Who is it? He stood. It's nothing. Tate. He walked a few steps away and answered. I couldn't hear the other person's words, only Tate's responses. Yeah. No, I'm back. I know. A pause. I'll deal with it. Another pause. Then his voice became quieter. Don't contact him again. He hung up. I stood. What was that? He slipped his phone into his pocket. Something from my old life. That's not an answer. I know. Is there a problem? He shook his head. Not anymore. I didn't believe him. Tate. He looked at me. For the first time since he'd returned, he looked genuinely worried. I didn't come back here because everything was going great. I waited. I left because I thought I needed a different life. And I was wrong. He looked toward the street. I just didn't realize how wrong until recently. I wanted to ask what had happened, who had called, what he was running from. But before I could, he stepped closer, not touching me, just close enough that I could feel the warmth coming from him. I'm sorry, Jet. For what? For disappearing. I nodded. Okay. And I'm sorry for pretending nothing changed. I looked into his eyes. Something changed? His smile was small. Everything. Then he stepped back. Come on. Where? I'll drive you home. We walked back toward his car. Neither of us said much. But when we reached the parking lot, Tate stopped beside the passenger door. Tomorrow? I looked at him. Tomorrow what? Dinner? You just had dinner with me. I know. He smiled. I want another one. I couldn't help smiling back. Okay. Good. He opened the car door for me, and as I got in, I realized something. Tate had come back into my life acting like nothing had changed. But now I knew the truth. Something had changed. Maybe it had changed 12 years ago. Maybe we'd just been too young to understand it. And whatever had happened to Tate while he was gone, whatever he'd been running from, I had a feeling I was about to find out. Because the next afternoon, he showed up at my door with 2 coffees and a box I'd never seen before. And when I asked what was inside, he said, "Everything I never gave you." The next afternoon, Tate showed up at my apartment carrying 2 coffees and a cardboard box. I opened the door and stared at him. "You know you can text before showing up, right?" I did. I checked my phone. There was nothing. "You texted me?" "Eventually?" I laughed. "That isn't how texting works." He held out a coffee. "Peace offering." I took it. "What's in the box?" "Something I've been carrying around for years." That immediately made me suspicious. "Tate? Just open it." He walked past me into the apartment like he still lived there. I shut the door and followed him. He put the box on my kitchen table. For a moment, neither of us touched it. Then he said, "I found this when I was packing." I opened the lid. Inside were old photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of us as kids. Me with missing front teeth. Tate wearing a ridiculous Halloween costume. Us at the lake. Us standing beside the treehouse. A picture of the 2 of us at 16, sitting on the hood of his car. I picked it up. That night. Yeah. I looked at him. "You kept this?" "I kept all of them." I flipped through the photographs. Then I noticed something underneath them. A folded piece of paper. "What's that?" Tate's expression changed. "That's why I brought the box." I unfolded it. It was a letter. The paper was yellowed at the edges. My name was written across the front. Jet. I looked up. "You wrote this?" "Yeah." "When?" "The night before I left." I stared at him. "You never gave it to me." "I couldn't." "Why?" He took a breath. "Because I was afraid." I looked down at the letter. "You've said that a lot." "I know." I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably his. The first line made my chest tighten. I don't know how to say this without making everything weird. I stopped reading. "Tate, keep going." I looked back at the page. The letter was only a few paragraphs long. He wrote about how much our friendship meant to him, how he'd never felt as close to anyone, how he didn't understand what he felt when we were together. And then he wrote something that made my hand shake. "I think I like you in a way I'm not supposed to." I stopped. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I read the sentence again. Then again. Tate stood across from me, watching my face. "I didn't know how you'd react," he said. "You could have given me the letter." "I know." "You could have told me." "I know." "You could have trusted me." His eyes dropped. "I should have." I folded the letter carefully. "What happened after you left?" He sat down. "Nothing dramatic." I waited. "I tried to forget about you." I frowned. "How'd that work?" He gave me a tired smile. "Terribly." I sat across from him. He continued. "I dated people, moved around, worked too much, basically did everything I could to avoid thinking about home. And me? You were always there." He tapped the letter. "I kept this the entire time." I didn't know what to say. "So, why now?" Tate looked at me. "Because I realized I was tired of being afraid." I swallowed. "And you came back." I came back. "To me?" His eyes stayed on mine. "Partly." That answer should have annoyed me. Instead, it made my heart race. "What's the other part?" "My family." "Okay." "And maybe I wanted to see if the person I remembered was still here." I smiled faintly. Disappointed? Not even a little. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. Do you still feel that way? Tate didn't pretend not to understand. Yes. One word. That's all it took. I looked down. My coffee had gone cold. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. That's easy for you to say. No, it isn't. He leaned forward. I spent 12 years wondering if I should come back. I'm terrified right now. That made me laugh. You don't look terrified. I'm very good at pretending. I smiled. I remember. The tension in the room softened. Then Tate reached into the box and pulled out another photograph. He handed it to me. It was one I'd never seen. We were standing outside the old movie theater. I was looking at the camera. Tate wasn't. He was looking at me. I stared at it. You took this? No. Then who did? My sister. I looked closer. The expression on Tate's face was almost painfully obvious. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at me like I was the only person in the world. You really liked me, I whispered. I did. Back then? Back then. And now? He smiled. Now I'm older and supposedly wiser. Supposedly? Definitely supposedly. I laughed. Then Tate stood. I should go. I looked up. Already? He nodded. I don't want to overwhelm you. I didn't know why, but the idea of him leaving suddenly bothered me. Tate. He stopped. Yeah? Stay. He looked at me. I wasn't sure who was more surprised by what I'd just said. Just stay, I repeated. He nodded. Okay. We sat on the couch. No big conversation. No dramatic confession. Just two people who had spent 12 years apart sitting next to each other again. Eventually, Tate leaned his head back. Do you ever wonder what would have happened? All the time. If I hadn't left? Yeah. He turned toward me. What do you think? I thought about it. I think we would have figured it out. He smiled. I think so too. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us looked away. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. A message from an unknown number. You should be careful with Tate. My stomach dropped. I looked at the screen again. Another message appeared. He didn't tell you everything. I quickly locked my phone. Tate noticed. Who was that? Nobody. He studied me. Jet. I looked at him. It's nothing. He knew I was lying. And from the way his expression changed, I knew exactly what he was thinking. Someone had found him. Someone from the life he'd left behind. And suddenly, I wasn't sure whether Tate had come back to town because he wanted a second chance with me, or because he was running from something he hadn't told me about. I didn't tell Tate about the messages. Not that night. I couldn't explain why. Maybe because I was scared of what his answer would be. Maybe because some part of me still wanted to believe that his return was simple. That he'd come back because he'd missed me. Because he'd finally realized he'd made a mistake. Because after 12 years, we'd somehow found our way back to each other. I didn't want a stranger with an unknown number ruining that. So I locked my phone and tried to act normal. Tate wasn't buying it. You're thinking too much. I looked at him. About what? Whatever that message said. I smiled weakly. You're very observant. I've always been observant. Not when we were kids. I noticed everything. Really? Yeah. He leaned back against the couch. I noticed when you were upset. I looked at him. I noticed when you lied. Apparently, you didn't notice when I cheated at cards. You were terrible at cheating. I laughed. For a moment, the tension disappeared. Then Tate's expression became serious again. Jet, if somebody contacted you because of me, You need to tell me. I will. You promise? I nodded. I promise. He studied me for another second. Then he let it go. That night, after Tate left, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the letter, about the photograph, about his confession, and about the message. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Ask Tate about Marcus. I stared at the screen. I didn't know any Marcus, at least not one connected to Tate. I typed a response. Who is this? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Nothing came. I put my phone down. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. Someone who knows why he really came back. That was enough. The next morning, I called Tate. He answered on the second ring. Hey. Who is Marcus? Silence. Not the kind where someone is thinking. The kind where someone has just been caught. Tate? Where did you hear that name? Someone texted me. Jet? Who is Marcus? He exhaled. I was hoping you'd never have to hear that name. Well, I have. I'll come over. Now. I'm already on my way. He arrived 15 minutes later. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept either. He walked inside and sat down. For several seconds, he didn't speak. Then he said, Marcus was my best friend after I left. I waited. We met during my first year away. He knew about you. What did he know? Everything. My stomach tightened. Everything? That I had feelings for you. That I never really got over leaving. I sat across from him. What happened? Tate rubbed his hands together. Marcus had feelings for me. I wasn't expecting that. He told me eventually. And I didn't feel the same way? Tate looked at me. I tried to let him down gently. Did it work? No. I didn't like where this was going. He became possessive, Tate continued. He started getting angry whenever I talked to other people, especially if I mentioned you. Why? Because he knew you mattered to me. I stared at him. And what did he do? He started contacting my family. My expression changed. What? He told them things about me, personal things, stuff I'd told him in confidence. Why? To embarrass me. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to. What happened after that? I cut him off. And he accepted that? No. Tate looked down. He kept trying to reach me. Different numbers, different accounts. Eventually, I changed everything. I thought about the messages. Is he the one texting me? I don't know. But you think it is? Yes. Why would he care about me? Tate's expression tightened. Because he always blamed you. For what? For the fact that I never chose him. I stared at him. That wasn't my fault. I know? Does he know that? I don't think he cares. I stood and walked toward the window. So, you came back here because of him? No. I turned around. Then why? Tate looked at me. Because I finally got away from him. I waited. And because I realized something. What? That I had spent years letting fear make decisions for me. He stood. I lost you once because I was afraid. He took a step toward me. I wasn't going to let that happen again. My heart started pounding. Tate, I know this is a lot. It is. I know. He stopped a few feet away. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I already forgave you. His eyes softened. You did? Years ago. He smiled. Thank you. The room went quiet. I looked at him. There's something I need to know. Ask. Do you still love me? His expression changed. For once, there was no hesitation. Yes. The answer hit me harder than I expected. I looked down. I don't know if I'm ready to say that. You don't have to. But I think, he waited. I think I've loved you for a long time too. Tate's eyes widened slightly. You think? I laughed nervously. Don't push your luck. He smiled. I won't. He stepped closer. We were standing only a few inches apart now. Neither of us moved. Then Tate quietly said, Can I? I knew what he meant. I nodded. He leaned in slowly. Our lips met. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some perfect movie moment. It was nervous and careful and almost awkward. And somehow, that made it feel real. When we pulled apart, we both laughed. What? I asked. You're shaking. So are you. I'm allowed. Why? I've waited 12 years. I smiled. Fair. Then my phone buzzed. We both looked down. Another message. This time there was a photo attached. I opened it. It was a picture of Tate and me outside the coffee shop, taken from across the street. My stomach dropped. The message underneath was only 4 words. You should have listened. Tate's face went pale. Jet? What? He stared at the photograph. He's here. Marcus? Tate nodded. Then my phone buzzed again. A second message appeared. Tomorrow. The old baseball field. Come alone. Tate reached for my phone. No. What? You're not going. I stared at him. Tate, if he's here? That's exactly why you're staying away. But I already lost 12 years. His voice cracked. I am not losing you too. And for the first time since he'd returned, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself. Fear for me. Tate wouldn't let me go anywhere near the old baseball field. For the next hour, he paced around my apartment like he was trying to solve a problem that didn't have an answer. We should call the police, I said. I know. You don't sound convinced. I am. Then call. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he stopped. What? I don't have enough. Enough for what? Enough evidence. I stared at him. Someone is stalking me. I know. They're sending me pictures. I know. They told me to meet them somewhere. I know. And you're worried about evidence? He rubbed his face. I've dealt with people like Marcus before. You've dealt with him before. Yes. And he knows how to make everything look innocent. I sat down. What does that mean? It means he'll deny everything. That doesn't mean we do nothing. We won't? He sat beside me. We'll go to the police. I'll show them everything I have. Good? He looked at me. But first, there's something else you need to know. I already hated those words. What? Marcus wasn't just someone I knew. I waited. He was the reason I left my first city. I frowned. What happened? Tate stared at the floor. Things got bad. How bad? He showed up at my apartment one night. My stomach tightened. What did he do? He wanted to talk. That sounds harmless. It wasn't. Tate looked at me. He had been drinking. He was angry. He kept saying I owed him a chance. I didn't say anything. I told him no. And he punched the wall beside my head. I felt my jaw tighten. Tate, I wasn't hurt, but you were scared. Yeah. He gave me a small smile. I was terrified. I reached over and touched his hand. He looked down at our fingers. I didn't tell anyone, he said. Why? Because I was embarrassed? You had nothing to be embarrassed about. I know that now. I squeezed his hand. He squeezed mine back. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "We're going to the police." He nodded. "Yeah." We spent the afternoon documenting everything. The messages, the photograph, the unknown numbers. Tate gave the police his old information about Marcus. They took it seriously, but there wasn't much they could do immediately. They advised us to save every message and avoid contact. So that's what we did. For the first time since Tate came back, things became quiet. Too quiet. 3 days passed without another message. Tate stayed close. He came over every morning. We had coffee together. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. It felt strange how quickly he had become part of my daily routine again. And yet, underneath everything, there was a constant tension, like we were waiting for something. On Thursday night, we sat on my balcony. The city was quiet. Tate had his feet resting against the railing. "You know what's weird?" he said. "What?" "I thought coming back would feel different." "How?" "I thought I'd feel like a stranger." "You don't." "No." He smiled. "I feel like I never left." I looked at him. "That's what scares me." "Why?" "Because I remember how much I cared about you." He was quiet. "And now," I continued, "it's all coming back." Tate turned toward me. "Is that bad?" I thought about it. "No." He smiled. "Good." I laughed. "You're very confident." "I've earned it." "You disappeared for 12 years. "Okay, fair." We both laughed. Then he looked at me again. I meant what I said. "About you." My smile faded. "I know. I don't want to rush this." "I don't either. But I don't want to pretend we're just friends." I looked at him. "Neither do I." He reached across the space between us and took my hand. It was such a simple gesture, but my chest tightened. "I've missed this," he said. "What?" "Being close to you." I smiled. "I missed it too." He leaned toward me. This time, when he kissed me, there was no hesitation. It was still gentle, still careful, but neither of us was pretending anymore. When we pulled apart, Tate rested his forehead against mine. "Still think I'm complicated?" "Absolutely." He laughed. "Good. Why?" "Because you're still you." I smiled. Then his phone rang. He glanced at it. His smile disappeared. "Who is it?" He didn't answer. The screen showed an unknown number. He rejected the call. A second later, his phone buzzed. A message. He opened it. His expression went completely blank. "What?" He handed me the phone. There was a picture. It was of us on my balcony, taken from somewhere across the street. The message underneath said, "You really haven't learned, have you?" My blood ran cold. Tate stood immediately. "Get inside." "What?" "Now." We rushed into the apartment. He locked the balcony door, then the front door. "Call the police." I grabbed my phone. But before I could dial, there was a knock. 3 slow knocks. We froze. Another knock. Tate stepped in front of me. "Stay here." "Don't." He looked back. "Jet, don't open it." "I won't." The knocking stopped. We waited. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down. Unknown number. You should have listened to Tate. A second message appeared. He's not the only one who kept secrets. I stared at the screen. Tate saw my expression. "What does it say?" I handed him the phone. He read it. His face changed. "What?" He looked at me. "There's something I never told you." I felt my stomach drop. "What?" He hesitated. Then he said quietly, "Marcus wasn't the person who convinced me to leave town." I stared at him. "Then who was?" Tate swallowed. "My father." I frowned. "Why?" "Because he found my letter." The room went completely silent. "What letter?" "The one I wrote to you." I stared at him. "You mean the letter in the box?" He nodded. My father found it before I could give it to you. And? He told me if I stayed, he'd make sure you and your family knew everything. My heart sank. Tate. I was 17. He looked devastated. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't know what to say. So, all these years? I thought leaving was the only way. And your father? He died 2 years ago. I slowly sat down. And Marcus? Tate looked toward the locked door. Marcus knew the whole story. I stared at him. How? Because my father told him. Another knock came from the hallway. We both froze. Then a man's voice came through the door. Tate? Tate went completely still. I had never heard that voice before, but Tate recognized it instantly. His face drained of color. That's him, he whispered. I looked at him. Marcus? He nodded. Then the voice came again. Open the door. And this time, Tate didn't look scared. He looked angry. Because apparently, after 12 years, the person who had followed him all the way back to town had finally decided to stop hiding. Tate? The voice came from the other side of the door. Calm, almost friendly. That was what made it worse. Tate stared at the door for several seconds. Then he looked at me. Stay behind me. I'm not leaving you alone. Jet. No. He gave me a frustrated look. You've always been stubborn. You've always known that. Despite everything, the corner of his mouth lifted. Then the smile disappeared. I'm calling the police. He pulled out his phone. Before he could dial, Marcus spoke again. I know you're in there. Tate froze. How? I can hear you. I felt a chill run through me. Tate stepped closer to the door, but didn't open it. Marcus, leave. A short laugh came from the hallway. That's all you have to say? Leave. You really haven't changed. Tate's jaw tightened. Neither have you. Silence. Then Marcus said, That's not true. His voice sounded different now, less controlled. You changed because of him. I felt Tate's hand close into a fist. Don't involve Jet. Why not? Because this has nothing to do with him. Marcus laughed again. You still believe that? Tate looked at me. I could see the anger in his face, but underneath it was something else. Regret. Marcus continued. You always did this. You acted like Jet was some innocent little part of your life. Stop. You left because of him. I left because I was scared. You left because your father found out. Tate closed his eyes. And then you spent 12 years pretending you didn't care. I'm not pretending anymore. That shut Marcus up. I looked at Tate. He was standing straighter now, like something inside him had finally snapped into place. I cared about Jet then, Tate said. I care about him now. My heart started pounding. Marcus didn't respond. Tate continued. And you're not going to make me ashamed of that anymore. For several seconds, the hallway was silent. Then footsteps moved away from the door. I let out the breath I'd been holding. Is he leaving? Tate didn't answer. He was listening. The footsteps stopped. Then we heard the elevator. A few seconds later, the doors opened, then closed. Tate immediately called the police. They arrived about 10 minutes later. We explained everything. They checked the hallway, reviewed the building cameras, and took copies of the messages. One officer told us the cameras had captured a man entering the building. We're going to see if we can identify him, she said. Tate nodded. Thank you. After they left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. I sat on the couch. Tate stood near the window. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I said, You should have told me. I know. You should have told me everything. I know. I looked at him. Why didn't you? He turned around. Because I was afraid you'd see me differently. How? Like I was broken. I shook my head. Tate. He looked at me. You're not broken. His expression softened. You don't know that. I know you. A small smile appeared. Apparently, you still do. I stood and walked toward him. You spent 12 years thinking you had to handle everything alone. I did. You don't anymore. He looked at me. Are you sure? I nodded. Yes. He took my hand. His fingers were cold. I held on. For the first time since he'd come back, he looked relieved. I missed you, he said quietly. I know. No, Jet. His voice cracked. I really missed you. I squeezed his hand. I missed you too. He pulled me into a hug. I wrapped my arms around him. For a moment, everything else disappeared. There was no Marcus, no old secrets, no 12 years apart. Just Tate, the same person who used to sit beside me on the curb after school, the same person who knew when I was upset before I said anything, the same person who had somehow found his way back. When we finally pulled apart, Tate looked at me. I have one more thing to tell you. I laughed softly. Of course you do. This is important. Okay. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out an envelope. I recognized it immediately. Another old envelope. This is the second letter. I frowned. Second? He nodded. I wrote another one after I left. Why? Because I wanted to come back. He handed it to me. I stared at the envelope. Why didn't you? My father intercepted the first one. And this one, I never sent it. Why? Because by the time I was ready, too much time had passed. I looked at him. What does it say? Read it. I opened the envelope. The letter was longer than the first. It talked about the years we'd missed, the places Tate had lived, the people he'd met, the things he'd accomplished. But almost every section somehow came back to me. I wonder if Jet still hates black coffee. I wonder if he still laughs when he's nervous. I wonder if he still remembers the treehouse. Then, near the end, there was one sentence that made me stop. If I ever go back, I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. I looked up. Tate was watching me. You wrote that? Yeah. When? 3 years ago. I folded the letter carefully. Why did you finally come back now? He smiled. Because I realized there was nothing left to be afraid of. I stepped closer. You're sure? I'm sure. Then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't uncertain. It felt like the first honest thing either of us had done in 12 years. When we pulled apart, Tate smiled. Do you think we could try? I pretended to think about it. Maybe. He raised an eyebrow. Maybe? You've got a lot to make up for. I'll take that as a yes. I laughed. He pulled me closer, and for the first time, I believed that maybe the story between us wasn't about what we'd lost. Maybe it was about what we still had. But the next morning, everything changed again. I woke up to a message from the police. There had been an update. They had identified the man from the building's security footage. It wasn't Marcus. I stared at the message. Then another notification appeared. A photo. This one was old. Very old. It showed Tate and me when we were 17, standing outside the baseball field, the same night he'd left town. And written underneath it was a message that made my blood run cold. You still don't know what happened that night. I immediately called Tate. He answered half asleep. Jet? We need to talk. He was silent for a second. What's wrong? I looked at the photograph again. About the night you left. His voice changed. What about it? Someone says we don't know what really happened. Silence. Then Tate whispered, Jet. What? I do know. My stomach dropped. What happened? He took a long breath. My father didn't just find the letter. I waited. He came to the baseball field that night. I sat up. What? He found us. And? Tate's voice was barely audible. He wasn't alone. He wasn't alone. Those 4 words stayed in my head. I couldn't even speak for a few seconds. What do you mean? Tate was quiet on the phone. My father came to the baseball field that night. I know. He had my older brother with him. I frowned. Your brother? Yeah. I remembered Tate's brother, Ryan. He had been a few years older than us, but I'd only met him a handful of times. What did they want? Tate sighed. My father wanted me to leave without saying goodbye to you. Why? Because he'd read the letter. My chest tightened. He knew how I felt about you. He thought it was something I could grow out of if I got far enough away. And your brother? He didn't agree with him. I waited. He told Dad to leave me alone. So what happened? Tate's voice became quieter. My father threatened to tell your parents everything. I closed my eyes. That doesn't make sense. It did to me at 17. He continued. I thought he'd destroy your life just to punish me. So you left? Yes. And you never told me. I thought I was protecting you. I sat on the edge of my bed. You know what the worst part is? What? I spent years thinking you left because you didn't care. There was silence on the line. I cared too much, Tate said. That answer hurt more than I expected. I looked at the old photograph on my nightstand. The 2 of us, 17, smiling, completely unaware that our lives were about to change. Who took the picture? My brother. I looked at it again. Ryan? Yeah. Then why does someone have it now? I don't know. I thought about everything. The messages, the photograph from the balcony, the warning, Marcus, Tate's father, the old letter. None of it made sense anymore. Then I remembered something. The person at your apartment. What about him? You said the police identified someone from the building. Yeah. It wasn't Marcus. I know. Then who was it? Tate didn't answer. Tate? I think it was my brother. My stomach dropped. Ryan? Maybe. Why would he be following us? I don't know. We agreed to meet at the police station. An hour later, Tate walked through the doors. He looked exhausted. I walked toward him. Hey. Hey. For a moment, we just stood there. Then he smiled. Still here? Still here. He took my hand. The police had already reviewed the footage again. This time, they had a clearer image. And it was Ryan. Tate stared at the screen. I don't understand. The officer explained that Ryan had been in town for several days and had been seen near both Tate's apartment and mine. He hasn't committed a crime as far as we can establish, she said. But we strongly recommend you avoid contact until we know what he's doing. Tate nodded. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Ryan. Tate hesitated. The officer shook her head. Don't answer. Tate rejected the call. A message arrived immediately. We need to talk. Alone. Then another. You deserve to know what Dad actually did. Tate stared at the screen. I looked at him. Maybe we should hear him out. The officer didn't look thrilled. If you meet him, don't do it alone. Tate nodded. We arranged to meet Ryan at a public cafe with the police nearby. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked older, tired, not dangerous, just worn down. He sat across from Tate. For several seconds, neither brother spoke. Finally, Ryan said, I'm sorry. Tate stared at him. For what? For letting you believe the worst. Ryan looked at me. And for involving Jet. I crossed my arms. Why did you contact me? Because Tate wasn't going to tell you. Tate didn't tell me what? Ryan looked at his brother. The truth about your father. Tate went still. Ryan continued. Your dad didn't just threaten you. He looked at me. He contacted Jet's parents. I felt my stomach tighten. What? He told them Tate was confused, that he was going through a phase. He wanted them to keep you away from each other. I looked at Tate. You knew? I found out years later. Ryan nodded. Dad was trying to control both of you. Why? Because he couldn't accept that he couldn't control Tate. Tate looked down. And Marcus? Ryan sighed. Marcus knew some of it. So he wasn't behind everything? No. Ryan shook his head. Marcus was angry and obsessive, but he didn't start this. I looked at Tate. What about the messages? Ryan admitted he had sent the first few. My expression hardened. Why? Because I wanted Tate to tell you the truth. You scared the hell out of me? I know. That wasn't okay. I know. He looked genuinely ashamed. I thought if I forced the truth out, Tate would stop hiding. Tate shook his head. You could have just called me. I tried. You could have talked to me. I was angry. There was a long silence. Finally, Tate said, I forgive you. Ryan looked surprised. But don't ever involve Jet like that again. Ryan nodded. I won't. Then he stood. Before leaving, he looked at me. You should know something. What? When Tate left town, he took your picture with him. I looked at Tate. He smiled awkwardly. Ryan continued. He kept it in his wallet for years. I laughed. Seriously? Tate shrugged. I told you I missed you. Ryan walked away. The cafe suddenly felt quiet. I turned toward Tate. You kept my picture? Yeah. For 12 years? Yeah. You're ridiculous. I know. I smiled. Then I reached across the table and took his hand. So? What happens now? He looked at me. I don't know. That's new. I usually have a plan? Not this time? No. He squeezed my hand. This time, I want to figure it out with you. I smiled. Okay. We left the cafe together. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm, and the town looked exactly the way I remembered it. But somehow, everything felt different. Maybe because I finally understood what had happened all those years ago? Tate hadn't stopped caring. He hadn't abandoned me because I'd meant nothing. He'd left because he was 17 and scared and believed disappearing was the only way to protect both of us. It hadn't worked. It had just cost us 12 years. A week later, Tate and I went back to the old baseball field, the same place where we'd said goodbye. We sat on the hood of his car, just like before. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Tate said, I used to hate this place. Why? Because it was where I lost you. I looked at him. You didn't lose me. I thought I did. I smiled. You came back. He looked at me. And you stayed. Yeah. He nodded. I'm glad. I leaned against his shoulder. He rested his head against mine. There was no dramatic confession this time. No secret letter. No fear about what would happen next. Just the two of us. Finally honest. After a few minutes, Tate laughed. What? I just remembered something. What? You still owe me $20. I stared at him. You're still doing this? Absolutely. 12 years later? Interest. I laughed. You're impossible. You knew that when you were 8. I looked at him. Yeah. He smiled. And you still came back. I shook my head. No. He raised an eyebrow. No. I didn't come back. I smiled. You did. He looked at me for a second. Then he understood. And he smiled. Maybe that was the strangest part of the whole story. Tate came back to town acting like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. We weren't teenagers anymore. We couldn't get those 12 years back. We couldn't undo the fear, the distance, or all the things we'd missed. But we could stop running from what we'd always felt. And maybe that's what coming home really meant. Not returning to the place where you grew up. Finding the person who still feels like home. For me, that person had always been Tate. I just needed 12 years to finally understand it.